On August 17, 1996, a group of fearless explorers, Mark, Jack, and Peter, stood at the edge of something extraordinary, a newly discovered cave deep in the Tennessee hills. Their hearts raced, not just with excitement, but with a hunger for the unknown. This wasn't just any adventure, it was their obsession. The thrill of squeezing through tight spaces, crawling through hidden chambers, and discovering untouched paths below the earth kept them coming back, day after day. But little did they know, today would test their limits in ways they never imagined. Before we dive into video, please subscribe our channel. As always, viewer discretion is advised. For Mark, Jack, and Peter, caving was more than a mere hobby. It was an all-consuming passion. The adrenaline rush of exploring unexplored passages, the thrill of finding tunnels no one else had ever seen, was a feeling like no other. But with this obsession came the ever-present danger. The deep, uncharted caves were beautiful, but unpredictable. Each step they took beneath the Earth's surface could be their last. As they crawled through tight, dark spaces, the weight of the Earth above them was a constant reminder of the risks involved. Rocks could shift, tunnels could collapse, and one wrong move could be fatal. Yet, the danger didn't deter them. It fueled their determination. They weren't just explorers, they were adventurers, testing the limits of what was possible. They knew that with every new discovery, they came closer to the heart of the Earth, unearthing secrets that had been hidden for millions of years. But little did they know, the stakes would soon be much higher than they ever imagined. As the team descended into the cave, the entrance seemed harmless, a narrow passage tucked away in the dense woods. But what lay beyond was far from innocent. The passage they had discovered the day before was barely wide enough for a single person to fit through, and the air inside grew thick with dust. Mark was the first to venture in. His body twisted awkwardly as he maneuvered through the tunnel. The walls scraped against him, and every inch forward felt like a battle. Jack followed close behind, his movements just as cautious, his body contorting to fit through the narrow space. The tunnel barely allowed them to crawl on their stomachs, forcing them to flatten themselves to inch forward. The further they moved, the tighter the space became. Despite the discomfort, they were seasoned enough to know that this was just another challenge, another obstacle to push past. They weren't prepared for what awaited them next, something that would change everything. As Mark and Jack pushed forward, their progress was abruptly halted by a pile of loose rocks blocking the path. The tunnel, which had seemed like a promising lead, now stood in their way. Frustration settled in as they realized they'd have to clear the debris to continue. The air was heavy with dust, and the sharp edges of the rocks threatened to slow them down. Mark called out to Jack, his voice barely audible over the crunching of the rocks underfoot. They would have to break through the barricade, but the more they moved, the more they disturbed the unstable structure around them. It wasn't the perfect spot to stop rubble scattered around them from the day before, showing how fragile the tunnel really was. But they had no choice. With determination, Mark grabbed his tools and began chipping away at the rocks, not realizing that in their attempt to clear the path, they were unknowingly setting a dangerous trap for themselves. Just as Mark struck the rock again, a deep, sickening crack echoed through the tunnel. Before either of them could react, the massive slab of limestone above them gave way. The ground trembled, and the boulders crashed to the floor with a deafening roar, sending dust and fragments flying in every direction. The shockwave from the impact slammed both Mark and Jack forward. Mark's helmet took the brunt of the blow as he was thrown against the jagged rock, but the force left him disoriented, his vision spinning. When he regained his senses, the horror set in the path behind them was completely sealed. The rocks that had collapsed formed an impenetrable barrier, and they were trapped. The air grew heavier, suffocating them as they realized the full scale of the disaster. The passage ahead was still blocked with rubble, and now their only way out had vanished. For a brief moment, silence fell, and then came the overwhelming realization. They were stuck deep underground, with no way out. The gravity of the situation sank in quickly. Mark and Jack were trapped, with the weight of tons of rock sealing them in on all sides. Panic clawed at the edges of their minds, but they knew that succumbing to fear would only make things worse. The air inside the tunnel was growing thin, and the dust from the rockfall coated their throats, making it hard to breathe. They could barely move, their bodies pinned tightly against the jagged stone. Jack shifted slightly, but the walls pressed in on him, leaving no room to escape. The silence was deafening, broken only by the pounding of their own hearts. The the fear of claustrophobia began to settle in as anxiety turned into suffocating dread. But despite the overwhelming sense of being trapped, both men understood that giving in to panic could be fatal. They took slow, deep breaths, focusing on keeping calm. They needed to conserve energy, trust their training, and hold on to the hope that the team outside would find a way to rescue them. Outside the cave, the rest of the team quickly realized that time was running out. Monty, the most experienced of the group, immediately sprang into action. He knew that caving rescues were notoriously tricky. One wrong move could trigger another collapse, making the situation even worse. Without hesitation, Monty sprinted to a nearby house, borrowing a large sledgehammer to help with the rescue. Meanwhile, the others were already on the move, using rock hammers, crowbars, and chisels to chip away at the edges of the massive slab, trapping Mark and Jack. The air was tense with urgency as every tool strike echoed through the cave. But the work was slow. Methodical, too much force could bring down even more rock. Inside the passage, Mark and Jack remained as still as possible, focusing on conserving their strength. They knew that any sudden movement could make the situation worse. The waiting felt endless, but they held on to hope, trusting their team to break through the rock before it was too late. Hours passed, and the relentless effort outside continued. The team worked tirelessly, taking turns to prevent exhaustion, each swing of the sledgehammer reverberating through the confined space. Mark and Jack remained as calm as possible, their breaths shallow, conserving what little oxygen was left. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Monty's final strike landed with precision. A deep crack ran through the massive slab, and with one last push, it splintered into manageable pieces. The team cleared enough space for Mark and Jack to wiggle free. As Mark emerged into the open air, a wave of relief washed over him, his body shaking with the release of tension. The reality of how close they had come to disaster hit them hard, and the full weight of the ordeal settled in. What had begun as an exciting exploration had turned into a terrifying fight for survival, but they had made it out alive, bruised, but with a deeper respect for the unpredictable world beneath the Earth's surface. As Mark, Jack, and their team emerged from the depths of the cave, they realized that the true lesson wasn't just about survival, it was about respect. Respect for the unpredictable power of nature, for the dangers lurking beneath the earth, and for the strength of human determination. They had faced their worst fears, yet together, they had overcome the impossible. This harrowing experience reminds us that life, much like cave exploration, is full of challenges we can't always predict. But it's in those moments, when we're trapped and facing the unimaginable, that our true strength shines through. If you found inspiration in their story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more thrilling, real-life adventures. Your journey with us is just beginning. Stay tuned for the next video.